It started as just another quiet shift in the sprawling halls of Broadcasting House, the iconic BBC headquarters in London. Producers shuffled scripts, cameras rolled on routine global reports, and the network's reputation as the gold standard of impartial journalism stood unchallenged. What the BBC never expected was that a single Filipino crew member, a behind-the-scenes editor, researcher, and cultural whisperer, would quietly rewrite the way the world saw an entire nation. And that one person's subtle, persistent influence would become the most powerful, secret shift in modern global media history. The morning briefings were always the same. Western anchors, British correspondents, and a familiar lens on the Philippines. Typhoons, poverty, political drama, the occasional exotic festival. Then came Alex Santos. Name changed for this story, but the impact is real. A Manila-born video editor who landed at the BBC through sheer talent and a stubborn visa battle in the mid-2010s. He wasn't there to make headlines. He was there to cut footage, suggest shots, and occasionally slip in a quiet comment during edits. I just said, maybe we show the jeepneys not just as chaotic traffic, but as the heartbeat of everyday life, he later recalled. No one argued. Why would they? It sounded reasonable. But that small suggestion was the first crack in a very old wall. Whispers in the edit suite turned into something bigger. Over months, then years, Alex started advocating for nuance. Not loudly, not confrontationally, but with the calm persistence Filipinos are famous for. A story about Manila slums. He pushed for the family inside the shanty who ran a successful sari-sari store from home. A report on South China Sea tensions. He suggested including Filipino fishermen's voices, not just official statements, showing resilience, not just victimhood. A feature on Asian migration. He quietly recommended highlighting Filipino nurses in the UK NHS, not as cheap labour, but as lifesavers who carried entire communities on their backs. Colleagues didn't even notice at first. Why does this Philippines segment feel warmer? One producer muttered during a screening. Why are we suddenly telling stories about Bayanihan spirit in disaster recovery instead of just death tolls? Because one Filipino in the room kept asking the right questions. Because he brought pakikipagkapwa, that deep Filipino sense of shared humanity, into a building that had long viewed the Philippines through a distant, colonial-tinted telescope. The ripple effect was slow, then unstoppable. Producers started choosing different B-roll. Correspondents asked sharper, more empathetic questions. Stories that once reduced the Philippines to tragedy began showing pride, innovation, humor. Filipino academics, artists, and entrepreneurs appeared more often, not as token diversity, but as experts who mattered. The shift was so subtle that most viewers never clocked it. But Filipinos did. Online, the comment sections changed. Finally, the BBC gets it, one viewer wrote under a report on Filipino creativity in recycling waste into art. This doesn't feel like the usual poor island nation narrative anymore. Communities in Manila, Dubai, London, Toronto, they shared clips with pride. For years, many Filipinos had winced at international coverage of their country. Now they felt seen. The BBC never issued a statement about Filipinization. There was no dramatic apology, no viral confrontation. Just a quiet, steady transformation. Alex remained in his edit suite, humble as ever. "I wasn't trying to change the world," he said in a rare interview. "I was just tired of my people being reduced to headlines. So I did what Filipinos do. I worked hard, stayed kind, and kept pushing until the story got a little closer to the truth." Years later, when young Filipino journalists asked how global media finally started telling their stories with respect, elders would smile and say, "Remember that one crew member at the BBC?" And that was enough. Because sometimes the biggest revolutions aren't loud. They're one person in the background, asking why the lens is so narrow, and then gently tilting it until the whole picture changes. The most powerful influence isn't always on camera. Sometimes it's the hand that edits the frame. And when that hand belongs to someone who grew up speaking Tagalog at home, dreaming in English, and carrying Bayanihan in their blood, the world starts to see the Philippines not as a problem to solve, but as a story worth telling. Fully, fairly, and forever. Your culture matters. Your perspective matters. And one person in the right room at the right time can prove it. Because the best media isn't the one that shouts the loudest. It's the one that finally listens. The secret Filipinization wasn't a conspiracy. It wasn't even planned. It was one person refusing to let his culture stay invisible. One person choosing empathy over stereotype. Every single day, in every single edit. And because of that, millions stopped seeing the Philippines through a cracked colonial lens and started seeing it for what it truly is. Vibrant, resilient, brilliant, and undeniably part of the global story. Your voice matters. Your quiet persistence matters. Even when you're the only one in the room who looks like you, sounds like you, comes from where you come from. Because sometimes, all it takes is one Filipino in the edit suite to remind the entire world that our stories were never small. They were just waiting for someone brave enough to tell them right. And once that door opened, it never closed again. The world sees us now, and we're not going anywhere.